Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pood. We've got a special one for you tonight. Going to be a little bit faster than normal. We are delayed by a day as well. Shout out Jims for that one. Always making us delayed.
What? What?
Hey,
Jake's
hey,
the one who came
hey,
in at
no,
match
you
time
do
and
not
said,
blame
"No, I didn't
Jake
know what was
for
happening
anything.
today."
You don't
That
blame
is
him for
true.
anything.
Oh my
All right. But
goodness.
anyway, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. We got a lot of things to talk about. We got the normal crew with us tonight. Matty Ice on production. We've got Dapper. We've got Jake. We've got Jimothy. And then we've got CNK. But I don't
You
know. It's
say.
random. But first thing we want to talk about is we just want to talk about Snoopy being in the CDL and Vivid getting yeeted on out of here. Boys, what are we
Yeah, I
thinking
mean,
about it?
it's a big news bomb. I feel like it was like the Woj bomb of the CDL. Nobody expected this to happen. I think people thought the Snoopy was a bright future for the Boston Breach, maybe like next year. I don't think they
Yeah,
thought for
maybe
champs though.
Not quite this year.
Kind
maybe
of
going
kind of a
into next
surprise.
season.
Yeah, kind of a
No, that
surprise for
that man
this.
has been that man came from the Mexican COD scene. He's been in the US for a month and they're throwing him into champs against Optic round 1.
Dude,
Yeah,
dude,
I mean,
What are they
dude.
doing?
I think it's a faded move putting someone in who has no CDL experience right before champs. 'Cause I mean, I understand Vivid has not been playing great, but imagine him right before champs for Snoopy. I mean, is there some kind of like roster lock or something to prevent this?
Yes, technically there's a roster lock, and technically there's not.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah,
what?
yeah.
CNK, do you know the rule on that? Because
I
I
I
have heard murmurs about a roster
I
lock, but
heard
it
what they
seems like it's
talked
still
about.
happening.
Yeah, I heard what they talked about on the flank. So essentially, any team is allowed to sign a player and allow them to play at champs as long as they're not under an active CDL contract. So as long as they're not a backup and or a starting player for a CDL team. So like anyone on Paris obviously is a no-go because they were signed the rest of the year. So you couldn't pick any of them up. But Snoopy, for example, isn't a backup for Boston. He was just on their academy team. He isn't signed to any other CDL roster, so you could pick him up. There's also a few other players, obviously, that are insanely good that you could do the same with, pick up on your team to hopefully make it better. Shout out Seattle. So, you know, that's from my understanding,
Cred.
that's what it is.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, they're obviously trying to avoid like someone picking up the best player on a bad team and just trying to insert them in and
Right.
maybe just having them, win some extra cash at the end of the season. So it makes sense, the ruling. I just don't think, I think everybody just kind of never expected something like this to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm guessing the rule was made in the first because apparently the rule was adjusted this year, like this season,
Mm,
at the beginning of the season or at the end of last season, or one or the other. And I'm guessing this is never what they thought it would be used for.
hmm
Um, but this is technically exactly what you would use it for, right? So I don't know. I don't know if the whole time this was kind of like the game plan. They expected a team to make a literal last second change because there must not be like an official roster lock then, like per these rules. Like technically, you can make this change up until the day of champs.
I mean, the rule makes sense to me. I don't have an issue with the rule. I just have an issue with the move itself. That's just wild.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely
mean,
wild.
obviously, Snoopy is very, very good in challengers. Very good. Obviously, a lot of people are arguing whether or not you should have picked up him, Pentagram, or someone else from the team. But uh, shout out Dougie C. But obviously, Snoopy is like
No
technically their
one
best performing
wants
player right now,
to
so it makes sense to pick him up over literally anyone else off that team. And I think he's got the brightest future. So why not see what he can do against arguably the best team in the game or one of the best teams in the game that just got T12? I mean, they're definitely not going to bounce back better than ever. I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna echo what a lot of the talking heads have been saying so far, which is
Oof.
that this choice does not really solves Boston problems by any means. I feel like their main problem was not finding kills on the map, which I feel like you would bring in Snoopy to do that. Their main problem, I feel like, as a team, as a unit, is their lack of, leadership on the map,
Mhm.
lack of, calmness. Like if you listen to their listen-ins, it is just absolutely insanity. Like if you check in any of their listen-ins from like Toronto or even the online stages or the major before, it's just so hectic that it doesn't even like it sounds like things are happening, but in the grand scheme of things, there's not really like a game plan on the map. And I think Snoopy honestly makes that situation worse. I think I would rather see maybe them try to pick up somebody for Awakening only because he fills that spot that most like IGLs fit into,
Right.
which is that main AR role. But I think Snoopy, he's probably going to be good. Maybe they could beat somebody just by out talenting them, but he's not going to help them maybe win a championship by any means.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it seems
I
like
I
their
mean,
love
goal
Nick's
here
tweet.
is to just straight up outshoot a team to victory. I think
yeah.
they've given up on the like, let's do this
If
fundamentally, I guess.
if you look at their stage 5 like stats, I mean, you got Beans of a 1.15, Awakening of a 1.23, Vivid dropped a 0.85, and Krempa a 0.88. I mean, your ARs are performing well, but I mean, your subs are just very lackluster to see.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
get Kremp is like, when did Kremp get introduced to the CDO?
stage 5.
Stage 5? So this was his first stage.
I just think, like, Kremp has shown what he's capable of, which is, like, insane god tier gameplay. Like, I don't
Yeah,
think
like
Kremp would have been the one you'd be removing.
he has his moments where he has his
Yeah, it's just
sparks of
I feel like
greatness.
what we've seen though
But
with Vivid already being on and off the roster, Nero being obviously removed and now being basically abandoned by Boston as well. I
mm,
think it's pretty much like cut and dry here that the only person in the team they want to drop or feel comfortable dropping at this point would either be Vivid or probably I would imagine maybe like Beans or something. I don't know.
so we know Vivid, took a short break when he was benched. Looking at stage 5 just itself, I mean, Vivid dropped a 0.78 in hardpoint and a 0.63 in S&D. Do they think that Snoopy could bring in like that extra,
I
piece
mean,
for S&D?
I think with what he's been doing recently in challengers, I think the expectation is that he would very much so bring in more slaying. The
Yeah,
problem
because I
is that
mean,
Vivid brings a little bit more to the table when it comes to probably playing the game a little bit more properly.
mhm,
Because Snoopy is going to be learning that as far as the pro level, because everyone pretty much knows at this point in time that challenger players and pro players play a little bit differently just because of how the two scenes are set up right now. But that doesn't mean that Snoopy can't learn because what champs is what 2-3 weeks away, right? Like 3 weeks,
two
like
weeks, June
at two,
15th.
Hmm.
yeah, they're 2 weeks away. Like that's gonna be enough time for Snoopy to maybe not be like super comfortable, but he'll be comfortable enough. Like they're gonna get plenty of scrims
Yeah,
in. There's gonna be a lot of teams that want to scrim them because they may be an unknown variable, but also like a lot of these better teams have said, like these top three teams, like a Phase and Optic, like even like a Thieves Ultra, they a lot of those players have been saying the same thing is like, oh, we're gonna scrim these like bad teams that are going to like I say bad in quotes teams that are going, and then maybe if there's some teams that stick together that are willing to scrim that are already eliminated, they'll scrim them. But most part, they're planning on scrimming the bad teams and not the good teams. So like a team like Boston's going to get plenty of scrims and reps against good teams.
I just feel like they could do so much to help fix their respawn, but they really need a lot of help on S&D
Yeah,
because their
I,
S&D kind of sucks. Not gonna lie.
I think the problem is like I think they're at the point now where like I think they realize that like pretty much no matter what they do, they're looking at like a good side being a T6 and more than likely a T8 coming out of this champs. Maybe they just want to see what Snoopy's capable of in a environment where they're throwing him into the literal fiery pit of champs against Optic and then whoever they play in losers to see what they have going into next year with that duo of Kremp and Snoopy. Because like if they're both like what we know they can be from challengers, like you have an insanely deadly duo right there.
Yeah, and I
So
feel like at the end of the day, you if you're Boston, it doesn't necessarily not make sense to pick up Snoopy when you got to think that he's a big up and comer in the league and you can sign him now as opposed to having to worry about it in the offseason. If you're the coaching staff and you really don't think that this Boston team is going to perform well at champs, which I think everybody was under the impression that that would be the case. Like this Boston team was never going to really turn many heads at champs, barring like a major turnaround. So maybe the risk reward scenario is probably higher, um, and better placed with picking up Snoopy now as opposed to just waiting to the offseason and hoping he picks you guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I
Forces
feel
the
like
hand.
the first round of champs, like those matchups, I feel like people have come to an understanding on how those matches are going to turn out. Besides the Toronto LAT one, so I don't know if they're just like trying to showcase new talent at the big league level, where could raise his stock for next season. Help him land on a team if he doesn't stay with Boston, or just that
I
last
mean,
grasp of hope to potentially make that run at champs.
I mean, also you got to look at it this way. Like what we learned at Major 5 is that, and Major 4, like both those majors, we learned that these top tier teams can bleed, right? Like
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
a world where Boston comes out, world stars the hell out of Optic, and they go to round 2.
But it's like we said last week. It all depends on what type of Boston we're gonna get. Are we gonna get a good beans? Or are we gonna get bad beans? Is Awakening gonna pop off like we know he can, or is he gonna drop a stinker?
You never
I
know.
think
You
it's
might.
far less about how Boston's going to perform and how Optic's going to end up performing. I don't
Yeah.
think the best version of Boston could beat Optic if Optic's performing the way they should.
I mean, if Optic performs at a like 90% of what they should be able to beat Boston at their best.
Yeah, their entire if they perform at their stage 4 at the entirety of stage 4 or their stage 5 qualifier form.
Right.
I mean, it
We
doesn't
should get a
matter. It
different
doesn't matter
Optic team.
it doesn't matter what Boston brings out.
If this Optic team comes out and loses round 1, it's shocked. Like,
Oh, it is.
it's shocked, bro. Like, bring Pred over. We'll figure it out. Like, it's gonna happen at that point.
Unless it's gonna be like another Major 5 Atlanta FaZe situation back in Cold War, because we all know how that turned out. Atlanta FaZe bowed out. I think it was top 8 after losing to Seattle in losers round,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if you guys watched their docu series. Forgot what it's called, but after they lost that match, they had like a big talk. They really put their nose to the grindstone and whatnot, and they eventually came out 2 champs and speed ran New York like there was no tomorrow in winners round 1.
Speaking of speedrunning New York,
Shut up.
you know what New York did at the
Shut up.
major, boys? They made the loser bracket run of the ages and absolutely obliterated FaZe in the finals. Dapper, show us the tears, baby. Show us the tears.
I'm not gonna say obliterated.
I know.
Gotta wipe my
I'm
tears away
aware,
real
I'm
quick.
aware.
Wipe
That
my
was
tears
a
away.
that was a fantastic final.
It was
It really was.
It was a great time.
That was the
it-
first like final map final I think I've seen in the CDL for at least a little
I don't
bit.
think
Like
there
I
has,
think
yeah, I don't think there has been
Yeah,
one.
game 7, right? Haven't seen one in a
Yep.
while.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
I mean, every
CDL has had one. CDL has had one. Rocker and Ultra, Major 4, Cold War.
Oh,
Shout out Rocker,
and
by the way. Shout out
true.
Rocker, bro.
There
That
was
That
another
was
one
a
too.
great one.
Dallas and Atlanta. Major 3? No, Major 4. Major 4.
Yeah, that was a
Was
good
it
one
Major
too.
4?
I mean,
The first one back on land.
Let's just
Yeah,
say
shout out
if there's a
Cold War.
game 7 happening, it's gonna be a banger.
oh indeed. I mean, that game 7 was pretty good. I mean, what was the score of that final game? It was like 6-4 maybe. It was.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty
was-
dominant.
Dapper, it's burned in your mind. What do you
Yeah.
wanna?
What was
let us
it,
know
Dapper?
It
that?
was
What was the scoreboard, by the way, as well? Because you're gonna know it off the
It
top of your
was
head.
6-4. It was on Raid S&D. It was a 1v2 between, I think it was Stellium and RCs versus Illy. Illy was by open stairs, I want to say. And there was one top bedroom and bottom bedroom. Illy died. Atlanta FaZe won.
Nice.
Happens, man.
Let's use this time to segue into our full Major 5 discussion. Obviously, we touched on New York versus Atlanta FaZe, which was an absolutely great series. I thought New York definitely had a chance in that, and obviously they showed that they can compete at the highest level against
Yeah.
Atlanta FaZe. But what do you guys think about the rest of the bracket? Obviously we had Optic falling short early, which is kind of the main talking point that everybody's been kind of kicking into. But also you had Rocker really showing out well with a top 3 placement. New York making that full losers bracket run. I mean, realistically, even though Optic wasn't in there, it was a great major from a spectator point of view.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a good one. I mean, we saw London win a loser bracket match. Their first, what was
Oh
that
my
was their first
gosh.
land victory in like how long?
The whole year.
The entire
Yeah,
year.
right, the whole year. And then Seattle.
Before this land, they had a average placing below 12th.
And then isn't like Seattle, they lost to Legion, and haven't they like not won like anything since like the first major or something like that as well?
Since Major 3.
On land, right? Well,
Since
major 3. Okay. But I mean, still like
Because that's Major 3 was when Pred got shotgun vazzed by Simp in
dude.
round 11.
good times.
Yep.
Good times.
And
That was a big turner. That was a big turning point for
have
that
won
squad.
Oh yeah, that was like
But yeah, that was the turning point for that squad. They went to losers, played Optic, and got rocked.
Optic bread. Optic bread.
I mean,
That
looking
was
at
comedy.
this like this bracket, besides the obvious surprise of Optic, going 06 in map count, bowing out top 12. I guess not really surprised that Minnesota beat Boston. I mean, that one could have gone either way depending on which Boston showed up. But London versus Boston, that one surprised me. I did not have London winning that match at
Didn't I
all.
say it last week on the
I don't
podcast?
think
Like
anyone
London
could
is a
have.
team. Like this is the last time they're going to get to play all year, right? For like literally like 7 months. I am not surprised at all they came out and beat a team, like at all. I think
Yeah,
I was talking about this last week where I was like, I fully expect that team to be a different squad this major, specifically because this is the last time they're going to get to play. Like the fact that they came out and beat Boston is not too surprising, especially because Boston didn't have EQ. I mean, what? I'm sorry. I had to hop
Yes.
on it. I had to. I had to.
It seems like that did play a factor, especially at this major.
Yeah.
I feel like for London, like, you win that match and, obviously you've had an absolutely tough season, but with the new ownership going in, I'm pretty sure they have new ownership now. I feel like this offseason is going to be a big one for them. They have a lot of, a lot of opportunities to make some moves on maybe some European talent. You have that full offseason to maybe make some plays on players like, Harry, Abuza, Gizmo, people like that. Maybe build
Yeah.
around Nasty. I know that's what a lot of people have been kind of harping on. Maybe bring Trey back. I think Trey was really good for that squad, but
Also,
I
what's
feel
happening
like
with Afro? Like,
yeah. I mean, you never know what they could do with new ownership. They got a lot of money to work with, hopefully.
ideally,
Also,
right?
Yeah, ideally.
I would like to point something out. Out of, let's see here, 4, 8, 12, 16, 17 series here on the screen, I counted 12 3-0s. Have
It
you
was
ever had that
bad.
many
It was
sweeps
bad.
in a single tournament
Um,
before?
that was probably worst part about this major was I felt like every time I was tuning into a match, it was a 3-0. And
Yeah.
it was like everyone was like in the chat, like, oh, left side, right side, left side, right side. And they were like, it got to the point where like the flank and also like the like scump watch party and stuff, they were all joking, like, oh, they've got to switch backstage and they're swapping back and forth between left side, right side to determine what's the better station and stuff. It was pretty funny,
I
but it
mean,
was like
it was
bad.
I think it was like after the end of like day 1, like beginning of like day 2 or was like halfway through day 2. Someone brought out a stat. It's like the left side of the stage was like negative like 200 and something on kills compared to the
Yeah,
right side of the stage.
wasn't that all like proven wrong and stuff though? Because they came out that like at the end of the day, it was like actually like legitimately swapping back and forth between left side, right side with who was getting 3-0'd or who was getting dominated, stuff like that.
The At the end of day 2, the only team that lost on the right side of the stage was Optic. Shout out Optic. And
Hey,
that was
absolute blunder,
actually
baby.
twice.
Oh my
They
God.
lost on the right. They only 3 teams or 2 teams lost on the right side of the stage, I want to say. One of them was
Yeah, I think
Optic. The other
Optic
one was
won the
FaZe.
first match against Mutineers on the left side of the stage, or on the bad side of the stage. I don't remember which one it was. Optic won on the bad or lost on the bad side their first match, and that's kind of why people were, like, oh, there's a bad side of the stage. That's why Optic got smoked. And
Yeah,
then they played LAT, and then they lost on the good side of the stage, and then everyone was like, oh, I don't know what's going on.
didn't the higher seeded team get on the right side of the stage like every time?
I have no idea. I could
And the
not
lower
tell you that
seeded
answer.
It
team
was
got on the
probably
left side?
based
I
off
have
of
no idea. I don't know if it's based off of coin flips or
picks and
I
bans.
don't know how it's determined.
Because FaZe was on the right side the entire weekend.
They made it sound like it was based off the picks and bans, which would mean seeding, right? So
Yeah. Well, if it's based on picks
Um,
and bans, it would just be who picks team A, who picks team B. But
Right.
yeah, Optic lost on the bad side of stage and then got the good side of stage and got smoked by 100. Got smoked by LA.
Okay, guys, come on now,
Yeah,
come on now. Shout out Matty Ice, by the way. 100 Thieves. Hey, sorry,
that was funny.
LA Thieves. Looked like they were about to make a legit run, and then Ultra happened. But
I mean, that was a close 3-0.
I'm just
That was a
saying.
very close 3-0.
yeah,
It was.
yeah,
it
but it was
was.
still 3-0.
I said it was confident last
Mhm.
week. That's all I'm
yo,
saying.
can we shout out the crowd showing Draza all the love?
Okay. We also
That
got
was
to talk the fact that like Draza is someone who like talks smack as much as he does and stuff. That man's got to take a little break from Twitter or something because he's not liking it right now. He better come out
Yeah.
at champs though with the way he's been dealing with that. Is
one thing I will say is Draza has always kind of like backed it up, and I think
Yeah.
this is his chance to like really back it up because I
Oh,
think a lot of people
he
after the
probably
major
will.
they're like, oh, Draza's a loser or whatever they say about him, but like this is his chance to be like, I mean, I'm actually here. I mean, he's done it already. He did it last year. Let's see if he does it this year again. I mean, they got a good shot. I mean, if they come out round 1 and beat Toronto, That's a huge opening for them at Champs
Oh,
to
yeah.
to really make a run. That's really their match that I think will define how Champs goes for them.
I mean, speaking of which, I feel like we can move on from this major bracket. I mean, obviously it was pretty chaotic. Shout out to Subliners for winning. Also, shout out to Rocker for making a run, right? They needed to
Mhm.
make a run to solidify their champs, and they did that. And here they go. They got a little bit better seating on top of making sure they secured that, and they made sure that Vegas didn't stand a chance. Shout out New York for ruining all of our hopes and dreams of Vegas making champs. But anyways,
Show of hands, who thought New York would win 2 majors this year?
Not me.
I didn't think they were
I'm
going to
not
win
raising
one.
my hand. Not raising my
I didn't
hand.
think they were winning the first major or winning one, to be honest.
Hydra went crazy for
No,
sure.
shout out Hydra. Like people are
Hydra
talking
for
about the
MVP.
MVP race right now between him and Abizi, and it's like I feel like you really got to
So
give a
clear.
big shout to Hydra because I feel like he's more of an actual like most valuable player. Like Abizi
Oh,
has been
indeed.
doing a great job all year long, but Hydra like is the heart and soul of that team. Whereas like Abizi, like he's got like legitimately like dogs for teammates all the way around the board, which Hydra does as well. He's got the bulldog, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like if you sub in a BZ for Hydra, like I don't think that New York wins 2
There's no
majors.
way.
You know what
There's
I
no
mean?
way.
Like his impact is a lot different
Hydra went crazy.
than Abizi's, and obviously Kiz is a big part of that as well because he creates a lot of pressure while also opening up things for Hydra, allowing him to do like what he does. And Hydra does have kind of like a kill based nature. Like he plays for kills very heavily, but he does an absolutely fantastic job of it, and there's no doubting that. Um, I think Hydra's MVP, no doubt about it, and I think anybody else that says otherwise is tapping.
I mean,
There's just
also
no
they
way.
won 2 majors. Like
Hmm.
you can't deny the fact that a team that wins 2 majors, like they got something going on there, and the special sauce for that team is Hydra. Like it means a lot. But anyway, moving on from that, we've got the champs bracket here in front of us. We're gonna do a little breakdown on what we think how things are gonna go in the couple weeks to come so far. But we got some good matches here. Obviously, Atlanta versus Surge. I mean, 3-0. I feel like no one's really questioning that. Unless Surge completely changes from how they've been for the last couple months, it's a 3-0. It's probably not even going to be close.
Yeah, I
And
think
then,
just
I
lock
mean,
in Optic Pred. That team's done now.
I
yeah,
feel
right?
like
Like, for
They've
sure.
just
I mean,
Like,
stopped.
with the whole interface in champs, I feel like might as well just lock him in for like a top 3 placing because
I
when
mean,
was the last time they placed outside of the top 2
bro, I feel like
ever?
this year is different, though. Like, this game is so
Nah,
different than previous games. It really
nah.
is. Like, phase hasn't been the same phase of the past. And I think it's less of their talent. Well, obviously, it's not their talent. It's completely just like how the game is. Like, this game sets up for like so much crazy stuff. Like a team like FaZe should always be placing in that like top 3, top 2, which they did obviously, but still
I think they have
they
another
should have
grand
won.
finals appearance, another broken heart for me.
Yeah, I mean,
It's very possible. I mean,
uh,
I think from my first impressions on this bracket, I think FaZe got a very solid bracket setup to maybe instantly make it to the winners finals. They can very easily
yep.
beat Surge. They probably wanted to play Surge. And then Toronto and Thieves have notoriously had a lot of struggles against FaZe in the past. So I think they could very well lose to FaZe as well. I mean,
I
I think FaZe can comfortably take down LAT or Ultra.
Did you say Toronto and Thieves struggle against FaZe? Or
Yeah, I
just
think they
Toronto?
both struggle. I don't know if they've
Well,
like beaten FaZe that comfortably
I
like
feel
all
like
year.
not
so
counting online matches, right? Because if you count online matches,
oh,
it's a little bit different story. But like if we're talking just land, which we should be in this situation, like FaZe, like yeah, it's like
so
they should beat all 3 of these teams, including like Seattle, Toronto, Thieves. They should
I'm
be able to beat
confident.
all 3 of them without really
I'm
that.
confident against Surge and Ultra Thieves. I'm a little iffy on last time we played them on land. I want to say we got 3-1.
I mean,
That was major
but
4, I
that's the
think.
thing with both of those teams though, with Toronto and Thieves, both of those teams are capable of beating FaZe. I don't think Jake is saying
Mm.
they're not capable of it. He's just saying that if we get an ideal world where all of these teams are playing at their best, like they should be at champs, like FaZe should be able to beat them.
Yeah, I'm mostly saying they get to avoid Optic going
Yeah,
into winners finals. You know
and
what
they
I mean?
literally can't. Like,
Exactly.
As
well,
long as
now,
Optic loses from somewhere from round 1 to the finals, FaZe can just walk into the grand finals through the winners bracket.
Depends
Yeah,
what optic you get, man.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That was gonna be my second point, is that Optic also low key got a very blessed bracket. They got that bottom side, and while they did struggle a lot in Major 5, everybody knows that. If we see the Optic we've seen for the past 3 months and not the Optic we saw last weekend, then they could very well make it to the grand finals as long as they're able to get through these first two winners matches. Because I think if Optic win winners round 1 and winners round 2, which if regardless of whether subliners just won the major or not, if you think of Optic like before last weekend, you would expect Optic to take down NYSL pretty comfortably. If they can make it to winners, they're probably going to match up against Atlanta FaZe, and we've known how that has gone in the past.
I mean, big thing like Optics got going for it. They're probably going to be scrimming against Florida. I know Florida's eliminated, and they're probably just going to want to do their own thing. But you got to remember Dan Ghosty's father, Fellow, who looks exactly like him and sounds exactly like him. Well, Dan Ghosty sounds, yeah, but you know what I mean. But we'll probably convince the boys to hop on and scrim Optic. So Optic, you're gonna be good to go. You know.
Yeah, and if you're trying to match up against subliners in that winners round 2 match, you got a lot of VOD to work with because
Yeah.
New York subliners just played as many matches as you possibly could going to that grand finals run. You have all the VOD you could possibly want on any map you need.
I
This
feel
is a
like
really interesting
New,
bracket. Like for
New
the
York.
what's up?
Sorry, what? I was gonna say.
Well, oh my God, just go, just go.
Okay, I was gonna say, New York has shown that they are so beatable in respawn. I know FaZe took every single respawn besides one hard point. It's just New York is all of a sudden godlike in S&D. I mean, took all 3 S&Ds off of FaZe, which I did not expect whatsoever. I feel like as long as a team can figure out their S&D against New York can be beat. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, especially when you think about the fact that if Atlanta FaZe doesn't choke 5-2 on a CeeLo S&D, then FaZe is probably coming home with that Major 5 title. You got to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the big thing with this whole matchup is that I legitimately think Rocker can make some noise here against subliners. I legitimately think they can do that. They looked really good at the major. It's a team I
And then get
expected
beat
to
down by
change.
us.
I don't.
I mean,
Jims does not.
I would expect subliners to win. I really do, but I'm not going to be even a little bit surprised if subliners come out slow and Rocker just come out and win the series. I'm not going to be at all surprised by that.
I mean, Major 5 showed us anything is possible. Like, I don't even know what to expect against some of these
Did it
matchups.
though?
I know. I think Rocker got an easy side of the bracket. They were a
Yes.
top 6 team that
They
beat
did.
two other tops. They were a top 6 team that beat 2 other top 6 teams, and then got absolutely rolled by the teams that should have been in the top 3 spot. I think it's a race between. It's hard to call it between the top 5 teams, between FaZe, Ultra, Thieves, Optic, and Subliners. I have no idea who's going to win it. I think they can all take it. It just depends on who's going to show up.
I think subliners,
Straight
the
up.
problem is like just coming off of that event win, like they got to stick with. If they just like that when they come into this first matchup against Rocker and just destroy Rocker and move on to that second round against what will more than likely be Optic, like New York's got a pretty good shot, even if Optic is gunning at that like 100%. Like everyone's on it, like they were at like that Major 4 and also like quals for Major 5. Like Subliners legitimately has a shot. I mean, they got the arguably the MVP on their team. Would love to say MVP, but arguably the MVP on their team in Hydra, who is an absolute demon and will definitely make Hook wish he didn't go to champs. And I love Hook because I love Optic. But I'm just saying,
Yeah,
Hydra's a problem.
I wish there was a little bit more of a clearer picture of what happened to Optic this past weekend. We have no idea what Optic is going to show up to champs now.
Well, I think what Dapper said is a very good point that, this could very well be a reality check for Optic. Similar to maybe what happened with FaZe at that Major 5 in Cold War. Now, obviously that FaZe team was probably a little bit better than Optic was. They had, however many chips they had before that point, and then they really locked it in for that champs matchup because they really wanted to win, obviously, after that reality check. So, that could very well happen with this Optic Gaming team. We know that they're capable. We know that their talent is very high. Their teamwork is really good when they're on that upper echelon level of gameplay. But from what I saw from the Optic matches, I truly didn't get to watch them fully. But when I was watching, I saw a lot of trolling going on, and that's something you don't really expect from that team. Like insane trolling, like trolling that
It's not locked in.
top challengers would never do. And it's like there's got to be something behind that. It just doesn't make sense for 4 players to just absolutely lose their mind when they just
Yeah.
are one of the better teams in the game beforehand.
Yeah, there's reports of them just getting absolutely rolled in scrims. They obviously go to the event. They're getting 100-point clubbed in hardpoint on Bagra by Florida, which is
Yeah.
just like. And what was their win streak on that map? Like they had won it 12 straight times or something ridiculous.
And they were
Whatever it might have
slamming.
been. They were
Yeah.
slamming those 100-point clubs every single time that they were playing teams on Bagra. So, that was. They just flipped they had the switch on, they just flipped it off. Lights just went off in all their heads. I don't know what else to say.
Also,
It
I
made
just
no
remembered
sense. That
something.
Mercado hardpoint, like to this day, I'm so dude. I
If-
saw them
if-
loading up into Mercado hardpoint, and I was like, put my phone back in my pocket, went back to work. I was like, I'll
Exactly.
check back on that in about 4 minutes. 250.
Exactly. You saw Optic loading in Bagra hardpoint against Florida, and you're just like, all right, I'm just gonna go to the
Like, I
bathroom
don't
real
know. I
quick.
see
It doesn't
Mercado.
matter.
Yeah,
Yeah. It
Bagra.
just didn't matter. Yeah.
Dude,
I
I
mean, there
literally
was
like
a
legit. I was at
reports too, like Ghosty tweeted out too that he was sick, not feeling that well. Like if just one person in Ghosty is enough for that team to look like that, just because Ghosty's a bit sick, that's bad news for the other three. in
no.
my
That
mind.
means
scary.
sign Ghosty to a $500,000 a year deal right now, please, for the love of God. Give him some NyQuil and get that boy on a contract.
Yeah.
I mean, they were
Oh,
quad
man.
hitting P2 on Mercado with 15 seconds left. I was mind blown
You gotta do what you
watching.
gotta do.
Like they were
Um,
just not even rotating on the one map you need to rotate on.
Watching
Dapper,
both
your word
of
in.
like
yeah.
watching the
So
second series
Yeah,
was
let Dapper talk.
I just remembered something. The New York Toronto series, no losers bracket. Didn't that game 5 go around 11? Was anyone
Round 10.
I
remember?
do not recall.
Round 10.
Oh yeah,
6.
it was supposed to go round 11 and then Toronto trolled.
Yeah, I feel like the
63.
difference between Toronto going to the grand finals and New York going to the grand finals is that one bullet that Scrap missed on Kismet.
Yeah.
If that one bullet would have connected, I feel like Toronto would have taken that series.
I mean, it's
100%.
very possible.
Agreed. One of Toronto or New York could have very, very easily won that event.
Dude, that's why this
Either
champs
of them.
is like so wild
Either
because
of
I
them.
could legitimately, like you said, like Jim's, I could legitimately see a phase, an ultra, thieves, an optic, a subliners. Like
There were 4 contenders for Major 5. Like even Ultra Thieves, like that was a 3. Yeah, sure, it was a 3-0, but those maps were as
Right.
close as it could possibly get for a 3-0. So you could see Thieves playing New York next, and then potentially beating New York, going on to probably 3-0 Rocker, and then getting into finals again. Like the top 5 teams of this major at champs, I have no idea who's going to win it. No idea. I don't think New York's a favorite. I don't think FaZe is a favorite. There's 5 favorites.
There
It's
really
cool
is.
to see. It's cool to see.
It really
I
is a
mean,
toss up on who's going to take
I
this
like
one
it this
out.
way.
round one is
I love it
definitely
this
gonna
way.
help let us know like how it's gonna go though. Because like if Thieves were to come out or Toronto comes out and just destroys the other team, we're gonna have a pretty good idea of how this event's gonna go. Like
Ultra and Thieves round 1. Who you got?
I'm taking Thieves. Draza's gonna come out and do that guy. Like as much as I'm not the biggest Draza fan, you can't doubt like how talented he is, and he's
Yeah.
gonna come out and just demolish everybody. And Kylo Ken's gonna be right there with him because they both just have insane amount of passion. They feed off that drama.
Yeah, I think Thieves just has that little more of like Eye of the Tiger. It's champs. They're going to get it done this time instead of it's probably going to be like a 3-1, I think.
I'm feeling ultra.
I'm thinking Thieves personally.
You know
Not
what,
a
Dapper?
chance.
That's us. I'm just kidding.
But we are
Ultra's
running out
really
of time
good.
here. So
I'll
we may
the
want to
reason why
move
I
on to
say,
the Miami Heretics situation.
We got stuff.
we got to go.
Yeah, we gotta move on. But so yeah, like Jake just said, like the Miami Heretics thing. Shout out the Florida Mutineers. Was a great brand while it lasted, but no more are they. The ship means will be missed. Pushing people off the plank was always a great thing. But Miami Heretics, I'd love to see Heretics come back into it. Looks like they want to try to build a little bit of a Spanish European roster, so that'd be pretty cool. built a little bit around Vickle. Maybe things might change based off how the roster ended the season. I doubt it, because they kind of had game plans going in. But all I do hope, boys, what do you guys think? Does this mean the optic curse is gone?
No.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
Absolutely
I think
not.
they could form a pretty solid roster with the idea of what they're going for. I forget the exact roster they were looking at. I'm pretty sure it was Vickle, somebody else, Journey, and Lucky.
Yep.
And I mean, if those players are on point, and the fourth, I think the fourth might have been Real, but I could be mistaken. It doesn't matter. They could definitely form a solid squad and definitely make some waves in the CDL. So I think it's going to be a good thing, and it's going to be interesting to watch. No doubt about it. There's going to be a lot of fans behind that squad.
Oh, for sure.
They're gonna have a huge fan base.
It's going to be so awesome, though.
It's
Does
gonna
this
be
mean
so.
we're going to get
I
like a
loved
Barcelona major or something?
Heretics. Sorry, what was that CNK?
Does this mean we're going to get like a Barcelona major?
Please,
Ooh.
please.
Well, I mean,
We don't have a
would
London
go.
one, but
they're in
they also didn't
Miami.
have money.
Yeah, so the only thing I'm questioning though is that London also got the investment from Koi, right? Which is a big collection of like large Spanish content creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So what's their roster going to be? Are they? I thought the rumor was they're going to move to a Spanish city and get out of London. I don't know.
That
There's
would
been
explain why
the
Heretics
only
isn't
thing.
doing that.
Yeah, the only thing we know is that at the start of the season, London tried to change their name and they couldn't because the season was too close to starting. So, yeah, no idea what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, like if London wanted to do what Heretics are doing right now, there still is a good enough pool of players to maybe pick and choose from if you want to maybe do like a Spanish or just a European in general team. You know, like there's a lot of players left on the board. If Heretics take Vickle, Lucky, and Journey and whoever, there's still players like Super, Eric Boom,
Abuja.
you know, Furious Klaus. There's a huge chunk of French and Spanish players to choose from. And I mean, it'd just be interesting to see the league go more international and maybe see those teams make some waves because I think they're most definitely capable, especially from what we saw in BO4. I mean, that Heretics team was looking pretty solid in those group stages. They just never really made it happen at LAN.
Yeah,
I mean, shout out to Abuja. That guy's about to get a deal and a half from a CDL
As
team.
he should. That guy's
So,
great.
I
Yeah.
can't wait,
He
bro.
should. He should.
Yeah,
Oh man,
He absolutely
the
should.
guy is pretty disgusting. God,
it's
that's off
insane.
that guy.
I mean, it sucks we're going to be losing Florida Mutineers. It was a good brand. I mean, they had some great memes. Social media manager was on point all the time. Wish they could have been a little bit better throughout the history of the CDL, but you know, they got it done when they could.
Hey,
They
one
always
thing
beat
about
Optic,
Florida Puppeteers.
oh yeah,
Sag.
one thing about Florida though, their graphics, like their match graphics, were insane.
On one, dude.
Like
They did a fantastic job for the rumors of like them saying that they don't pay a lot to their players, like they generally just pay the minimum. They did a very, very good job with their brand. Like unlike London, who just didn't really put in the effort to build a good brand, right?
Mm.
Like Florida did a really, really good job with their content, with their intros, with their graphics, with their team. Just in general, they really did try while also using like for the most part the bare minimum.
Right.
I mean,
And then
aside just from Florida's like social media, I think like every CDL team's like social media managers were amazing this season because like it was just like friendly banter between all the teams. Like after each match, they would post like some meme or GIF or something, just absolutely roasting at the team after they would lose. And I just thought it was hilarious thing ever. Like I loved it. I actually looked forward to it after the matches, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, I mean, another big thing kind of happening right now is it was kind of like low key announced that it sounds like LAG will be running it back, not team wise, but like the org will be running it back next season until they can get a sale, unless they get a sale in the off season. So basically, they're going to be running the org until they sell it. So
That
won't be.
where was that? I haven't read anything on
I
that.
saw that, like I don't remember if that was Jacob Hale or something like that, but I saw that the other day. That was like during the
Huh.
major that came out, or right before the major. I think that came out. I have no idea
Yeah,
where
I
it came
haven't.
from. I just remember
Let
reading
me
it on
go find
Twitter, and
that.
it was definitely from a credible source. But so LAG wants to sell the spot, but they're not gonna just like dip on the league. Whether that means they're getting like CDL support or whatever to stay is unknown. Obviously, who knows, right? But they still want to pursue a sale, obviously.
Hmm. I
But
wonder who they get.
who to come in and
I
buy it?
wonder well, if to buy it or just play for them. Like
Well, I'm sure they'll keep some of the players they have signed. I'm sure they just won't really care about winning, right?
maybe.
I mean,
That's
I
a
feel I feel like if
tough
that's the case,
situation
like they
for
just
anyone to walk
they
into.
just kind of do the best with what they got. Like you don't
Yeah,
try to sign a superstar
right.
team, but like you try to get some bits and pieces. I mean, realistically, there is a good chunk of teams that could have made something happen with putting all 4 players on the minimum. Obviously, you don't want to see that, but a team like Paris or Vegas, they had they were one spot away from making that champs finals, and they were a lot better than they were last season. They just found a good chunk of players to play for their organization. There's a lot of good pros out there, and realistically, they could have made maybe 1 or 2 more moves there too to even get a couple of better players on the squad. But it just never really worked out that way. There's a lot of players to go around, and I think realistically, like some of the GMs may need to really reevaluate how they scout talent, because there's a lot of talent out there that is just not getting utilized.
But
Yeah, and
also,
that's
like,
gonna be a big problem for a long time because expansion
Yeah.
is not happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
The-
I didn't hear really any stories of top amateurs that rejected spots on lower tier teams this past season. In Vanguard, you heard a lot about it. Like I think like
Yeah.
Havoc was offered a spot on Paris at some point last season that he rejected. Just things like that. I didn't hear any of that this year.
I think it's because there was less offers from those bad teams and like the quote unquote like bad teams that were making offers. Like I would imagine like a Vegas and stuff like that were trying to like legitimately get better and legitimately be like a winning team. So I think it was probably less people wanted to say no because there was actual like better opportunities. And also not to mention like look at like Florida going through and like rebuilding their roster, paying people a little bit over the minimum to be on their team, Optic bringing in guys like Dan Ghosty, Boston bringing in all the challengers, guys like legitimately a ton of people got picked up and they realistically got put in pretty good positions. They weren't just put on those like yeah, like a team like London wasn't able to make a change, but realistically was London offering changes because I feel like we already talked about it. They're planning on just completely slashing the roster minus Nasty most likely anyway.
Mhm.
So like I think it was just good
And then
opportunities.
again, what
Even
is London
LAG.
going to do? If they end up being a Spanish team next season, what are they going to do? Are they just going to continue to pay the minimum, or does Koi want to come in and field a really, really competitive
I
roster?
think
So
they'll if
I
they come
I
in and
wonder
they
who
wanna
they
make
pick
a
up.
Spanish team, they're gonna pay.
I wonder
Same
who
thing
they
with
pick up.
Heretics, like, hey,
But
well, if
is there enough Spanish talent to
no,
have
that's
two
that's the
incredible teams?
problem is,
No.
like, you can have
Yeah,
1.
that's the problem.
So, the problem would
Yeah.
then become who's gonna offer more, and right now,
I
since
think
Miami
Heretics has a stronger brand.
right, well, and also
I mean,
they start with Vickle.
yeah,
That's a
that
big
too.
That's a
advantage.
good start. That's a good
That's a
start.
That
really
too.
big
They could
advantage,
just
so I
re-sign
feel like
Bickle.
they'd be the team that
Times
would
his
have
+1, you're good.
so that means that Koi is probably gonna come in, they probably want a Spanish roster, but it probably just won't be, like, possible. Maybe they have, like, 1 or 2 Spanish players, but it'll probably just be an EU roster. They bring in, like, an Abuza and stuff like that.
I think
Mhm.
doing half Spanish, half EU would not be too bad at all.
I
As
think
long as the
No,
Spanish
these
players can
challenger
speak
teams have made
English
it work,
well.
right?
I mean, there's a lot of EU talent sitting out there because of all of the people that couldn't come to NA because of the visa situations, and there's some good Spanish talent out there as well. There's a lot. Like I was saying before, there's a lot of talent to pick from. You just kind of have to make those pieces fit. And I think it's very possible. I think we could see a lot of high caliber rosters this season. We've seen the roster talent go up season by season. I think we're going to see it again in this offseason because
Yeah.
there's a lot of pieces to pick from.
And since there's going to be more like quote unquote EU teams, we're going to see a lot of dominant EU players from challengers get a legitimate shot. Like whether that
Mm.
be whatever London turns into, but also Miami, obviously bringing in the Spanish players like Journey and Lucky. Like we're going to see like a completely different league next season, and it's going to be a fun one, like a really fun one.
Very
But
fun.
Absolutely.
I will say the podcast has run to its maximum length. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will be ending this episode of the Pood. But don't forget, we've got some great matches coming up here in a little bit. Just stick around for another 15 to 20 minutes. We'll get some Call of Duty action on the board for you, casted and produced by the goats. Some of them in this call, I do believe. But
Jake is on the mic tonight.
hey, that's what
That's
I'm
me.
talking about. And then I do believe Matty Ice, you producing today? He said yes. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys can hear or not, but that first matchup is going to be the Boyston Boygas versus Denver Surrender in gold mixed, and the second one is going to be the Dallas Flat Tires versus Chicago punted in silver mixed cell. So that's if things don't change, but for right now, those are the matches. So everyone have a fantastic night. We had a good little pod here, and we'll see you next week.
They-